Welcome to the Real American English Podcast. I'm your host, Rhea. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast dedicated to helping you not only understand English better, but also communicate like a native speaker. Today, I'm sitting across from two lovely people, a couple, Stephen and Donna, who have agreed to have a little discussion with me. Why don't we begin by you guys telling the audience a little bit about yourselves, where you're from, age, if you want to, job, interest, hobbies. You can begin.
Hi, my name's Stephen, and originally I was born and raised in England and lived on a abandoned World War II Air Force base. My dad was in the Air Force. We moved from there in 1974 to California, and I graduated high school in California at a little town called Riverbank. Some of my hobbies is I like to draw and paint. My wife calls me an artist. I guess I am. I like to cook as well, and I did that for most of my life. And so my wife calls me a chef. I guess I am. But anyway, we have 4 boys. We have 12 grandchildren, and we are currently living in Western Kentucky.
My name is Donna, and I was born in Dos Palace, California, a very small little town. Most people haven't heard of it. My parents were wonderful. I had a nice life. Graduated from high school in 1979, giving a little bit of age away there. But most of my adult life, I worked as a waitress for the first 20 years. Then I became a massage therapist, which I enjoyed, and I did that for probably about 25 years. And now currently retired and just enjoying everyday life with my husband, the artist and the chef.
And did you two meet in California?
Yes, we did meet in California. I was actually working at Benji's restaurant, and my husband now became the manager there. And we met and were married shortly after that. And how many years ago was that?
That was 1985, I believe, when we met.
And we got married 1988.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Today, we're going to be talking about the differences between living in some different areas in the U.S., in different states, Kentucky, California. I know you said that you lived in Idaho for some time. You can also throw in anything that you want to about living in England, if that's what you want. So just talking about some differences. And let's begin. You met in California. You got married in California. If you had to describe California to someone who has never heard of it, how would you describe it?
I liked California. It was, of course, I lived most of my life in California. I was born, and I lived there until, gosh, how old was I when we moved to Idaho?
We moved to Idaho in 2015.
Okay. So anyways, most of my life was in California. And the nice thing about California is the weather's moderate. I mean, but if you want to go to the snow, you can drive to the snow. If you want to go to the ocean, you can drive to the ocean. Everything we were in Central California, so everything was close by. And it was a nice place to grow up.
For me, California, like I say, I came from England. I moved to California when I was 15 years old. And to me, it was just a very warm state and sometimes very hot state. Mm-hmm. It's also a very big state, and it has beautiful parks in it. And me and my wife were talking just yesterday about it's amazing that we can be in a couple hours, we can go through several states around Kentucky. And in California, you could drive 2 hours in any direction from the central part of California and still not drive into another state. I mean, it's just a very big state.
And we had, like, in our national parks, absolutely beautiful, the biggest trees on planet, I
on the
think.
planet, yeah.
I mean, some of the most incredible big redwood trees, and we didn't even know. We just took those things for granted as growing up there, you know, knowing when you went camping that you were going to see the General Grant tree, which I don't even know how big around.
The sequoia trees, and
They're huge.
well, they're probably, I think the General Grant has a diameter of 50 feet. So at the trunk, it's at the base. It's a very huge tree, and it's over 300 feet high. But I mean, they're incredible trees. The granite mountains are incredibly beautiful. We used to camp in that park most of the time that we went camping, and at a place called Rhodes End. In Kings Canyon National Park, and it's just so beautiful.
And we didn't even know that you know, that is California. Those trees, and some of that is just the most beautiful. We took for granted those things.
Yeah.
Speaking of the weather, usually when I hear people talk about California, in my mind I think, oh, it's always hot and sunny and just really pleasant. But I think that's because many people, including myself, probably tend to think of maybe particular places in California where the weather is always like that. Maybe Los Angeles or San Francisco, those cities, the biggest cities. I think a lot of people who aren't from there or who haven't traveled around there, people just tend to think of Los Angeles, San Francisco.
Yes.
And so for me, I just always imagined it's always really pleasant to be out and about.
It's interesting. San Francisco is obviously, you get the Bay of San Francisco Bay, so it's right on the coast and on the tip of the bay. So the temperatures there can be pretty balmy, but they can also be very chilly as well. I mean, you get a lot of fog in San Francisco, so it's a cool ocean breeze there all the time. So it's, and there's days when it's warm as well. And Los Angeles is particularly very warm in Los Angeles. We were in the Central Valley, so it was very hot there. I mean, summer times would last probably 5 months, that it would be three months at 100 degrees, if not over, that it was just that hot. And if you're in the mountains, you obviously deal with the snow, but it's also even hot in the mountains in the summertime. It's a big, beautiful, warm state.
Yeah, downright hot.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very hot.
So California is not just San Francisco, it's not just Los Angeles.
No.
There are other places, and they have different types of climate, different weather. That's important to know. Oh, another thing that I usually think about is that, well, connected to the weather being really nice is that a lot of people are beach bums. Beach bums.
Well, we didn't live by the beach.
Okay.
And we were in Central California, and not everything is by the beach. But there are in San Diego. If you go to San Diego, that literally is. You will see beach bums and literally people who just live on the beach, and they're basically homeless living on the beach. But so there is, you know, that's a real thing.
Maybe another terminology for beach bums would be those that just enjoy the beach so much they spend their life there. The entirety of their life is there. And so you get a lot of surfers there. Mm-hmm. We did Santa Cruz several times. We did LA beaches several times, San Diego beaches several times. And you just get people that hang out at the beach all the time. I mean, they just... that's their life. I mean, it's almost a spiritual event for them to be at the beach and be grounded by, you know, nature and the waves and the ocean. But I mean, the beaches are beautiful. We had a great time whenever we went. But yeah, there are beach bums, those that live their life on the beaches.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you miss the beaches? Because, you know, around here in Kentucky, the only thing we have is the lake.
I like the beach and I enjoy going to the beach, but me personally, I'm more of a mountains and I like the trees. I'm very happy here in Kentucky and everywhere I look. And that's another thing, it's dry in California. The grass is not green necessarily all year round. It is it can be very dry. Here, the difference would be that everywhere you look, it's green and lush. But we've never experienced this much rain in our lives,
Okay.
have we?
Donna hasn't experienced this much rain in her life. Like I say, I was raised in England, and there's a lot of rain in England, and everything is green in England. They also did not use sprinklers. But I love Kentucky as well because it reminds me so much of England with the narrow roads and the rolling hills and the hedgerows and the trees. Just beautiful. California's beautiful. Each state has its own beauty. Idaho was beautiful. Idaho had 7 different mountain ranges, and
Yes.
it was just incredible. We could walk out of our house, and you could, no matter where you looked, you were looking at mountains,
surrounded
and
by mountains.
it was just beautiful.
Since we're on the topic of weather, things related to the weather, recently here in Kentucky and some surrounding states, we experienced some storms and tornadoes. In my area, we had a hailstorm. And for people who aren't from this area of the states, it might be pretty terrifying to have to experience all of these things. I was born and raised in Kentucky, so I'm somewhat used to it. You can never be completely used to this type of weather here, but we know every year it's probably coming. So in that way, we are accustomed to it, but you can never be truly prepared for the type of weather that we get here. Before you moved here, did you know how the weather was in terms of all the thunderstorms, severe weather, all the time, some people going crazy and things like that? Did you know about it?
Well, when we were, of course, we're in California, and then we moved to Idaho. Well, Idaho had completely different weather than we were used to in California. In Idaho, we had snow and storms like we had never seen. And so that was, that was kind of a shock, learning even how to drive in the snow, because, we weren't really accustomed to that. But I have to say, here in Kentucky, I have never seen anything like the storms we have seen here, with the thunder and the hail. The hail that we had just the other day was the biggest hail I've ever seen in my life. And I haven't been terrified at all because, of course, I trust in God. But it really is something, and you really cannot know until you experience a thunderstorm in Kentucky, I think.
But we did have an idea of what the weather was going to be like before we moved here. We were looking at property in Kentucky for the last probably 4 years, and we were doing so because our kids had moved here. So it was great for us to experience Kentucky vicariously through our kids while they were here. So there was a big tornado that hit in this area back in 2021 that did a lot of damage. So we wanted to find out, if everybody was okay. And so we knew that there was some severe weather here in Kentucky, but we didn't really experience it until we got here, obviously. And so we got here in December of this last year. And to see the ice storms, to see the rains and the thunderstorms where it just sounds like cannon fire going off nonstop with these thunderstorms, and then to see clouds, I've never seen clouds, stormy clouds. I mean, it was just spectacular. But at the same time, a little unnerving, what you might encounter with those clouds. But anyway, we are just blessed to be here.
California, well, I usually hear about some wildfires or earthquakes. Did you ever experience some really big earthquakes while you were there?
No. Well, we felt it, but it never did any kind of damage to any place that we ever lived. Or go ahead.
So I've experienced 3 big earthquakes in California. And there was a town that we lived in when we first moved to California from England, and it was a town called Riverbank, and it was around 1979. And there was an earthquake that hit, and I was sitting on the curb outside of our house. I felt the ground shaking, but I could also see the undulation of the earthquake waves. The street would roll up and down. That was very interesting. And then also there was another earthquake in 1989 that hit the Candlestick Park, the Bay Area in California, and we were actually in a mobile home then, and you feel it so much more in a mobile home. Everything just started swaying and rocking, and so that was interesting. And then in Idaho, we also experienced a earthquake. Normally you feel a tremor of an earthquake and it kind of goes away pretty quickly. This one lasted for quite a while, and it was a pretty significant event, but there was no damage. So yeah, earthquakes are crazy, and wildfires happen all the time there in California. A lot of brush fires in the woods, in the national parks, in the mountains is where it normally takes place. And we've driven through some of the places where they've had wildfires, and that they were going back to where we would camp. Every tree on the hills that we were driving through was just burnt to the ground, and so kind of devastating to that end. But yeah, and again, no matter where you are, you always have freaky nature, and it's going to do what it's going to do. And no matter what man does, nature is just going to do what it wants to do when it decides to happen.
Right. Here in Kentucky, we don't really get earthquakes. I think I remember maybe one time I felt something that I thought was an earthquake. I asked my parents, did you feel that? And they said, I felt something. So we weren't sure if it was an earthquake, but we don't really get them around here. We don't have wildfires or anything, but like you said, no matter where people go, they probably will face some different types of weather events, natural disasters, or something like that.
Sure.
I want to move from the weather and talk about the cost of living. I have heard that living in California is quite costly. People talk about the gas being higher. They say that rent is much higher, houses. People just always say the cost of living is much higher there. And I've always wondered about that. I've been to California just once, but I only went there because I had to transfer. I went from Nashville to Atlanta to Los Angeles and then to Japan. So I didn't have time to explore any of the city or anything. But I always wondered, is that the case? Is the cost of living significantly higher there?
Yes. Yes. Go ahead.
Donna answers yes, and I'll explain. I think right now the cost of gas per gallon in California is around $5.89 a gallon. When we were there in 2014 was the last time that we were there, it was probably $4.25 a gallon. It's expensive. Utilities are expensive. Registering a car is expensive. Mm-hmm. The typical semi-used or partly used car, I guess they're all used once you've driven them off the lot, it would cost you about $350 a year to register a vehicle. And in talking to my brother who had just bought a vehicle in California, it cost him almost $700, and that was just this last year. So licensing, utilities are very, very expensive. When we were there, our utility bill would run over $300 a month, and that's just using a swamp cooler, not an air conditioner. And so things are high. Water's high. You need to have a good job or both people working in your family to make it work for you. When we were raising our kids there in California, it was hand to mouth for very, very, very many years for us to get by, and so it's costly. And we come here and we're living off of retirement and Social Security, and we're doing okay, So it's one of the reasons why we moved here. California, I think, is the number one most expensive state to live in, and I think Kentucky ranks around 7th as far as cost of living. So that's good.
Yeah.
Seventh cheapest, I should say. It's the seventh cheapest state to live in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the reason our kids moved is because they wanted to buy a house. And although they both had, good jobs, they couldn't afford to buy a house in California. And so that's why they moved here. And of course, we followed them here, basically.
Yeah, I think that this area has started seeing more people coming from other states because the cost of living is so much lower here. And gas, I can't imagine gas being $4 or $5. I can't imagine it. It's crazy to me.
According to my brother, they're expecting it to go up to $7.50 a gallon. Things aren't changing. So
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. Maybe a lot of people, they're considering moving to different places. Some people might go to Texas, other people might go to Florida or some other states. Kentucky isn't one of the top places people tend to want to come to, but it's understandable considering, well, if people are nature lovers or they're just tired of paying the high prices, they may want to come here and live. I think it's relatively safe, especially if you move to more of the rural areas, the countryside. It's a pretty safe place to be, so many people want to come here. Cost of living is pretty good here, I would say. Let's wrap up with this last little thing that I want to ask you about, which is celebrities in California. Okay, so have you ever seen a celebrity? Because I just think, like I said before, since I always pictured people living in Los Angeles or San Francisco or something, I just thought, oh, people probably run into them on the street or something, just going to get coffee. Oh, look, there's Brad Pitt, or I don't know. It's just something that people probably think about. But I know you said you lived in the central part, so maybe they didn't go there. But did you see celebrities?
Well, not a lot, but I did. Steve Perry from Journey. He was from Hanford. And we lived in Hanford for a little while. And I actually worked at Sizzler as a waitress, and I waited on him several times. But to truth be told, with the first couple of times I waited on him, I didn't even know who it was. So I didn't recognize him. But really, I mean, where we were from, you don't typically run into a lot of celebrities. If you go to LA, you're down there in Hollywood, you might see some celebrities, but typically I would say no. And California is a big state, and they are typically all in the LA,
San Francisco,
yes,
Sacramento areas, San
Yes.
Diego, yeah. So I was just trying to think. So my job when I was in California, I was working in the Department of Corrections. So I can't say that I met what you would call movie star celebrities or big musicians celebrities. I met a more notorious type of celebrity. And so in my career, I've met Charles Manson, I've met Sirhan Sirhan, I've met the Hillside Strangler, and so quite a few notorious criminals. Honestly, each one of those guys wasn't very big in stature. They just had big personalities and obviously went the wrong direction. But yeah, those were the notorious celebrities that I met in my life.
Interesting. I've never met a celebrity before. If you come to Kentucky, you're probably not going to meet any. Maybe if you go down to Nashville, you may run into some of the country stars. I know some of them like to live around the Nashville area, but here in Kentucky, no, you're not going to, you're not going to see anyone who's famous for really anything.
Right.
Well, I want to thank you guys for agreeing to have this discussion, and it's been a blast. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
That does it for today's episode. Stay tuned for the next one. Take care.